experience questionnaire. And it's a questionnaire of 10 questions, and each question is meant to have a profound and strong correlation between you having experience that is described in the question and you suffering from trauma later on in adulthood. Um, I want to remind everybody that they can actually take the test by scanning the QR code here on my left on this slide here, just where my finger is. And this will take you to my website, and there, without any sort of commercial interest being involved, you can take the test and find out for yourself. You can even send me the results if you wanted to have a chat about them, but you don't need to. So without further ado, I want to go back today, Rene, to the question that we were touching on last time, which was the second question on the ACE test, this very famous test. And the second was to do with being pushed and grabbed and hit and somewhat physically abused, right? Like physically hurt. Not just like the first question was more to do with insults, so psychological, verbal, emotional abuse. And this has got more to do with physical abuse, right? And then the next question will be almost a sub question to the second one, because it's still a form of abuse towards the body, but now it becomes sexual. So we talk about being fondled with, being touched in any sexual way by people who are 5 or more years old, and then being forced to have oral sex or anal or vaginal intercourse with somebody, right? Now, the adverse childhood experience questionnaire, as it reads, has to do with childhood, right? So all of these questions have to do with more or less taking place between the age of 0 and 12. But also in larger context between 0 and 16 and even all the way up to 18, right? We cannot exclude in trauma talking, we cannot exclude we need to be very inclusive at the beginning. And one thing that these two questions brought up for me, Rene, was one of these early stories that you told at the beginning of our journey in these lives, whereby you mentioned a friend who, and I probably am not saying this quite right, you might have to remind me, but she said something along the lines that she wouldn't want to be with a man that couldn't hit her.
Absolutely. She said that a man who wouldn't hit her doesn't qualify to be with her.
So for a man to become close to her, to engage in a love relationship with her, he has to be able to hit her, right? And I don't know if I mentioned at that time that I felt that there was an underlying sort of familiarity with violence in the realm of love for this person. So to sort of argue my case, I wanted to present a story today, a story that I know you will, that you have looked into, and a story that is presented in a documentary by Louis Theroux. The title of the documentary, I think, is called Dark States, and it's part 1 or part 2. And this particular episode of the Dark States series of Louis Theroux deals with prostitution and particularly the relationship between sex workers and their pimps in a city in the USA called Houston, right? So go ahead, take it away. You have got a bunch of slides to show us and a story to tell us, if I understand.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for bringing this documentary to my attention, and I really enjoyed watching it. So what I want us to cover on this episode is a segment of this part 2 documentary, whereby we get to see this lady called Danisha. Danisha is the lady in pink, and with her roommate Jax. Now they are in a city in the US called Houston, And now this particular area that we are picturing here is a shelter called Santa Maria Hostel. These are shelter for recovering drug addicts, and many of those recovering drug addicts are former sex workers. Now, Danisha actually joined this particular shelter, and her roommate in that particular facility is Jax. Now, like you said, Louis Theroux is actually interviewing different individuals in this particular documentary, and he gets to meet Danisha. In fact, before this, they were able to meet one of her former customer, a man called Keith, who is actually a truck driver, as we see on this documentary. At the time of this documentary, he's a truck driver, and he was freshly divorced and got to procure Danisha's services, and that's how Louis got to know Keith through Danisha. Now, Louis comes to, in this particular setting, in particular day, to have some conversation with Danisha, and wants to pick up from their last engagement where they got to meet this individual called Keith. And the first thing that he tells Danisha is that it was nice meeting the individual Keith, and he asks, what are your feelings for Keith, the truck driver, Keith? And Danisha gets to explain that she appreciates him. Um, she has love for him, but she says that she is not in any way wanting to be in a relationship with anyone at this particular setting in her life. However, the issue that Louis also brings up is that we have just seen her and Jax, which that is a relationship. We know that there's Keith, and Louis also brings up her old pimp and man named T, who happens to be in jail at the time of filming of this documentary. So Louis brings those in three individuals. We've seen Jax, we know Keith and T, and like, wait a minute, you don't want a relationship with anyone, but you're in a relationship with three people. And she laughs. She said that she's not in a relationship with anyone. Jax is a friend. So the person that lady we just saw is a friend. Okay. Brings out two people, Keith and T. And he asked, what are the directly, who are you most attracted to? What does Danisha say? Danisha claims the one in jail. I'm the most attracted to the one in jail. Louis remembers this is a pimp that is actually in incarceration. So just to confirm, Louis just explains he's the one who treated you the worst, I suppose. And he says that she confirms that yes, she is the one who treated her the worst, who abused her, who put her in the streets, who began to use her for her body for sexual gratification and get all the money from those proceedings. Now, he also now digs deeper to her question, to the answer to her question, and wants to know first, what exactly does he got that you don't get in the other two? Why him? Why T? Why is T the particular answer for you? And she says that T made her feel part of her family. T doesn't want to lose her. That's what she believes, and that's what T tells her. Writing her letters from jail, he does write her letters from jail saying that he loves her, he doesn't want to lose her. Um, their intimacy has some passion and emotional connection to it. So she derives some emotional connection from their relationship. Instead, when she mentions Keith, the truck driver, it's only physical. She says that Keith only contacts her when it comes to the physicality of it. I want your company. We go, I buy you some gifts sometimes. I buy you some food sometimes, and we have our intimacy. But that is just about it. That's the only time you contact me is when there's intimacy and you want some company. But for T has made it that um, she feels that T doesn't want to lose her, wants to still be with her. Even when he's incarcerated, he wants to feel connected to her. So Louis asks, this emotion, where does this come from? He asks, do you know a sense of pleasure? You derive a sense of pleasure that you get in providing for someone? Since you mentioned this is a family. She says that this is a family you have. It's not just Keith who sees you as a someone that you get services from. There's a family you're connected to. So is it a feeling of you're providing in a family. Are you the mother? You call him daddy. Do you feel like a mother in this particular setup? And what kind of passion do you get from it? He says she gets to explain that unlike what is believed, that pimps are just there to manipulate the sex workers and the sex workers cannot manipulate them back, Danisha makes it very clear that she can also manipulate T. So it's not an imbalanced dynamic as many people believed. It's quite balanced for her particular situation. She can manipulate him and he can manipulate her. And Louis actually digs deep into this, like now, and like what we believe that you are the one being the victim, he can also be the victim to you. So what does that make you feel? It is because it makes her feel like she is in control in this situation. That unlike Keith, who just calls her when it's for physical intimacy and she doesn't know what to do after that, for T, he has made it clear that I don't want to lose you, so I need you as much as you need me. And now I feel we are connected. And Louis gets to understand,
Rene, sorry
why do you
interrupting you
enjoy
there.
this
I don't know if you,
kind of dynamic?
sorry interrupting you for a second. I
Sorry,
don't know
come again.
if you can hear there is an alarm ring here, so just give me a second.
Absolutely.
I wasn't sure if
Thank you so
everybody
much.
was getting distracted by that. Also, I wanted to say, Rene, just a moment. Yeah, in this culture between sex workers and pimps, um, it's usually a few different girls working under one pimp, and so
Yeah,
in this culture, they call themselves a family, and they call the pimp daddy. So indeed, there are strong references to, yeah, to family life, or to the dynamics of a family. But obviously the girls are both earning the money for the pimp. They give all the money back to the pimp, as you say. They probably do all the housework at home. um, and there is this strange dynamic, and sort of overlap between the pimp being a manager, uh, the pimp being a the pimp being pseudo husband as well. So it's a very sort of unclear set of relationships, but there is a lot of attachment being formed, and there is a lot of tension in all these relationships. There is a lot of energy involved, right? And Danisha is speaking from this place, is essentially telling us, well, Keith is being rather nice to me. He does nice things to me, but there is no attachment that I feel towards him, right? I'm not really strongly involved with this person. Whereas the guy that is in jail, yes, he has treated me very badly. Yes, he's an abuser. Yes, he's in jail because he has abused other girls. But I would still choose him because he seems to be very attached to me. He seems to
absolutely.
be seeking
And
me in a dependent and way that I don't see Keith doing.
absolutely, thank you for clarifying that as we go through, is that Louis also gets to understand and wants asks at this point in the interview, what kind of individual would be drawn to this kind of attachment style. And this is where it gets quite personal for Danisha, where she gets to break down that if you know my background, if you get to know her background and begins to share something very pivotal of her upbringing, that I just want viewers to see what she says in her own words. She says she started getting molested at the age of 3 years old. At the age of 3 years old, she was experiencing abuse, and not just from one individual. She mentions from multiple individuals. In fact, two of her mother's boyfriends were the abusers. and perpetrating this on her. And her reaction at the time, like you said, maybe just started at 3, but as it was going over the years, when she had some coherency to express, she was saying that, no, I don't want to. She was trying to show her rejection when she was able to push away and try to express that I don't want this, I don't want this. But the response she would receive from these individuals is that if you tell, you're going to be in big trouble, you know? And this is from different individuals, multiple individuals who are threatening her pain with more pain and threatening her
Yeah.
experience with even harsher consequences. And
Yes.
it's a quite the
You know, this,
experience for her is that,
you know, Rene, what you're saying there
yeah,
brings me right back to this pie chart and to what we're saying, you know, at the beginning. There are certain typical situations that we think of when we think of trauma, you know, and this sort of abuse that Danisha, the sort of fear that is instilled in the person that is being abused is so very typical, and so much the kind of story that we would think of when trauma is involved. What is peculiar about Danisha is that if you met her, or if you just saw her, you know, through these pictures on the documentary, you'd hardly ever think that she has gone through what she has gone through, being sexually
absolutely,
abused from age 3. This is, you know, sort of out of this world for most of us, but more common than we think. And she even mentions that her mother knew about it. And we know actually that most of the sexual abuse happens within family situations rather than outside in the street. It's a myth that a lot of sexual abuse happens in a dark alley of a city. It actually happens much more often within a family. Uh, but obviously, what Danisha allows us to see is this connection between her choosing a man that has abused her over someone that is not abusing her, which sort of echoes with what your friend sort of was saying, right? I want somebody that is able to hit me. We don't know what she went through
okay,
as a child, but I had hinted that she might have been familiar with receiving a lot of physical violence, and how as a child she had associated the word of love with the physical violence. We don't know in terms of what your friends has gone through, if that is true or not, but we know that that is true for Danisha now, that she has
absolutely,
told us that she has been basically raped since she was 3. Of course, when you're raped and when you're saying no, I don't want to, no, I don't want to, it's not that you're saying, you know, you're taking your cup of coffee and saying no, I don't want to be raped. I'm sorry, I'm 3 years old. You know,
mm,
it's a very different dynamic. You know, your no, I don't want to, no, I don't want to is also expressed with the body. So for somebody to take advantage of a body that doesn't want that kind of action, they have to use their grabbing, their pushing, their slamming, their slapping, right? So there is sexual abuse, but we need to assume that there is also physical abuse. And with that physical abuse, we also need to assume that most likely there is also verbal emotional abuse, right? Because even at the level
absolutely,
of her saying, I don't want to, that I don't want to means I'm uncomfortable, I'm fearful, this is creating a lot of distress in me, right? So for me to continue to do what I'm doing to this person, if they're telling me, no, I don't want it, I have to use some form of emotional abuse, right? I have to dominate with my will completely the will and desire of the person in front of me. So sexual abuse includes a lot of different forms of other abuses, emotional certainly and physical certainly, right? But the problem is that Danisha is 3, and then she's 4, and then she's 5, and then she's 6. And throughout this period, which we call a developmental period, right? That's developmental
Absolutely.
um, trauma, right? Throughout this period, um, Danisha is becoming familiar with these dynamics. And what she's getting out of this situation is a kind of survival that allows her to eat and be sheltered, and maybe sometimes even be given things that she wants, or be allowed to go and play. Because if you don't tell, you won't get in trouble. If you tell, you will get in big trouble. We will kill you, as she says. Actually, Danisha says, I will kill you, right? One of my abusers will tell me, I will kill you. But when she is providing her body, when she's acting subserviently, when she's objectifying, letting others objectifying her, she's surviving the situation, right? So Danisha is becoming familiar with a way of being in the world that says, if you let others take advantage of your body, you will be able to live in this world. You will be able
Yeah,
to have food, you will be able to have shelter, and you will be able to receive some positive attention. I don't know
absolutely.
if that's true for you, Rene, but the situation that we read that Danisha is going through at the moment with the pimp is so similar to what she was going through as a child in her
With our
family
family.
life, right?
Yeah,
Her her mother would let the boyfriend abuse her sexually, and then her mother might have given her food, might have given her a hug, might have, provided to her some comfort. Maybe the men were bringing some gifts to her to have more sex with her, right? So she's getting her basic needs met out of allowing other people taking advantage of her, using her body, as she would say later, right? And similar here now,
absolutely.
she's letting the pimp use her body. The pimp puts her on the street to use her sexually to get money, and she will be fed through that process. She will be given shelter through that process. She will be given protection to that process, right? And so in that relationship, she feels familiar and she feels in control. She feels she has a sense of knowing. That sense of familiarity tells her you are in a place that you know how to handle, you know what to do in this situation. And Keith, despite the fact that it's a much better option at this point, it's something very unfamiliar. It's something that she doesn't know how to respond to. This is what
Absolutely.
leads me, when I hear the story of your friend, to say there is likely a history of violence in your friend's childhood, for her to be able to say that.
Absolutely. It's a good deduction to be in. And just to break down the situation, I think we are quite out of time for this particular
Mm,
episode. I think it's a great place to pick up from on the next one, just so that we can break down even more and further of the experience of Danisha and her family context, and even her new experience in the Santa Maria hostel. So thank you so much, Nicholas, on for bringing this forward for us for our on breakdown and analysis in accordance to what we have gone through in our all about trauma cases before, and also as what we're going to break down when it comes to the ACE test. Also, I really suggest and encourage you guys to subscribe so that you know next week when the next live is up, and also encourage you to support the stream as we bring these materials to your consumption. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for this particular
yeah,
episode, and
thank you,
looking forward
everyone.
to pick up
Thank you,
next week.
Rene. Thank you for
Bye bye.
watching. Bye bye. Thank you.